He's only 22 years old, and he's already seen as Rafael Nadal's natural heir. How did a kid from El Palmar go from clay courts in rural Spain to lifting the Wimbledon trophy, beating Djokovic, and winning the world over with a bold, joyful style of play? In this video, you'll follow the full journey of Carlos Alcaraz, the behind-the-scenes moments, the setbacks, the pain, the resilience, the mental pressure, and the key factors behind such a rapid rise without falling into easy labels. If you love sports, are drawn to real stories of reinvention, or want to understand what builds a champion's mindset, this content is for you, even if you follow more NFL or NBA than tennis. Alcaraz isn't just talent. He represents a generation that doesn't wait for the perfect chance. They create it. What happens when preparation meets boldness in packed stadiums? How does someone turn the pressure of millions of eyes into fuel to play even better? What invisible routine sustains confidence in tiebreaks and finals? And you, have you ever thought about the price of competing with joy and aggression at the same time? How far can daily discipline take you when time, media, and expectations are working against you? Stick with us. Carlos Alcaraz's journey might just make you rethink your choices, your limits, and the size of your dreams. Carlos Alcaraz Garcia was born on May 5, 2003 in El Palmar, a small suburb of Murcia with just over 20,000 residents. His father, Carlos Alcaraz Gonzalez, competed in national-level tournaments during the 1980s and, after retiring from the circuit, went on to manage the Real Sociedad Club de Campo. It was at that club at the age of 4 that Carlos began formal training using a junior racket adapted to his size. The local setup, with clay courts and daily access to training, allowed for a consistent and well-supported development. By the time he was 6, Carlos was already competing in tournaments organized by the Murcia Tennis Federation, often facing older kids under the watchful eye of coaches like Kiko Navarro, one of the first to recognize his ability to read the game. His motor coordination, above average for his age, stood out during technical evaluations carried out by regional scouts. In 2011, at just 8 years old, he won his first official tournament in the under-10 category, still using a continental grip, something rare among players that young. His technical style reflected the Spanish tactical environment, with long rallies and control from the baseline. The local public school always supported his athletic routine, allowing him to train at alternative times without affecting his academic performance. His father, mindful of a well-rounded upbringing, avoided enrolling Carlos in private academies during his early years, keeping him in a small, familiar training environment until the age of 12. During that time, he played in around 80 regional tournaments, winning more than 90% of them. According to records from the Murcia Tennis Federation, the name Alcaraz started circulating among clubs in the Valencian community and Andalusia. At 10, Carlos took part in an exchange program organized by the Spanish Federation for young prospects from different regions. That's when he began facing players like Daniel Merida and Mario Gonzalez Fernandez, who were standouts in the national youth ranks. In 2014, he played in the Under-12 Rafa Nadal Tour for the first time, reaching the semifinals. This tournament, sponsored by a private foundation and Nadal himself, introduced Alcaraz to elite Spanish coaches and gave him a taste of the high-performance culture that defines youth tennis in the country. Up until 2015, Carlos trained in 2 daily sessions, one focused on technique and tactics at the club, and another on physical conditioning, with an emphasis on endurance and agility. Even though he wasn't in a formal academy yet, he was already using tools like video analysis and working with a physiotherapist. His father kept detailed records of every tournament in notebooks, tracking basic stats like unforced errors and serve variations. By the age of 12, Alcaraz already had over 150 documented matches and a well-defined competitive profile, dominance on clay, occasional net approaches, and a preference for cross-court backhands with topspin. In 2016, at just 13 years old, Carlos Alcaraz was introduced to former world number 1 Juan Carlos Ferrero through agent Albert Molina, who had also worked with players like David Ferrer. Ferrero had just opened Equilite, a high-performance academy in Villena, Alicante, and saw in Alcaraz a technical and emotional profile that stood out from the rest of the juniors. With his parents' permission, the young Mercian moved to the academy, where he began living during the week and following a comprehensive development plan. The program included coaches, physical trainers, a nutritionist, and psychological support. Still in 2017, Carlos made his debut in ITF Futures tournaments, the entry level of professional tennis, and won his first professional match in November at just 14 years old. In training, Ferrero prioritized core strength, adaptation to different surfaces, and managing rally intensity, something rarely emphasized with players that young. This training was designed to avoid the early burnout seen in other Spanish talents who had peaked too soon. That same year, he also began competing in junior ITF tournaments, balancing both junior and pro schedules. In 2018, Alcaraz won the ITF J2 tournament in Vila do Conde, Portugal, and reached the quarterfinals at Roland Garros Jr., solidifying his position among the top 30 junior players in the world. At the same time, he kept collecting wins in futures events in Spain and Morocco, which allowed him to enter the ATP rankings at just 15. His routine at Equalite was adjusted to focus on key transitions, from junior to pro, from clay to hard court, and from a developing athlete to a player with a defined tactical identity. Ferrero worked on making his serve more explosive and shortening points with slices and net approaches. In 2019, Carlos won 2 ITF M15 tournaments and captured the ATP Challenger title in Alicante, a tournament that had helped launch the careers of players like Bautista Agut and Carreño Busta. That win placed him among the world's top 500 players, an unprecedented feat for a Spaniard his age since Rafael Nadal. His performances caught the attention of the international press after he defeated much more experienced opponents with an aggressive playing style and world-class movement. By the end of 2019, already seen as a rising star, Alcaraz signed with IMG, one of the world's leading sports management agencies, which provided logistical support for the following season. Even though he hadn't won any junior Grand Slam titles, he had already beaten several top 300 players and was widely regarded as the brightest gem of Spain's new tennis generation. Carlos Alcaraz officially made his ATP Tour debut in February 2020 at age 16, after receiving a wild card to play in the main draw of the Rio Open, an ATP 500 tournament held on clay. In the first round, he faced and defeated the experienced compatriot Albert Ramos Vinolas in 3 sets after a grueling 3-hour match under 30-degree heat. The win drew attention not just for his physical endurance, but also for the maturity he showed in his tactical decisions. He became the youngest player to win an ATP-level match since 2013. During the pandemic, Alcaraz continued training at Equalite and returned to the circuit with strong performances in challenger tournaments, where he picked up key wins in the second half of 2020. Between October and December, he won 3 titles in that category, in Barcelona, Alicante, and Villena, racking up 20 wins in 23 matches during that stretch. Despite limited crowds and a disrupted calendar, he took advantage of the competitive gap to climb quickly. The Spanish Tennis Federation began inviting him to train with the Davis Cup team. In 2021, his first full season on the main tour, Carlos started by qualifying for the Australian Open, where he won his debut match in straight sets against Botic van de Zandschulp. In April, he received a wild card to play in the ATP 500 in Barcelona, where he faced Rafael Nadal for the first time in the round of 16, losing 6-1, 6-1 in a match marked by nerves and minor physical discomfort. Still, that loss became a turning point. In the following weeks, Alcaraz returned to the challenger circuit and solidified his place in the top 100, earning direct entry into Grand Slam tournaments. The most symbolic moment of 2021 came in July at the ATP 250 in Umag, Croatia. At just 18 years and 5 days old, Alcaraz defeated Richard Gasquet in the final, becoming the youngest ATP tournament champion since Kei Nishikori in 2008. His run included wins over Filip Krajinovic and Albert Ramos, showcasing his consistency in best-of-3 matches. He received the trophy calmly, without over-the-top celebrations, a composure that caught the attention of the international press. By the end of the season, Alcaraz had climbed to number 32 in the ATP rankings, earning a seeded position at the following year's Australian Open. He also competed in the next-gen ATP finals. a tournament for the year's top 8 under-21 players, held in Milan, where he won the title without dropping a set. On that campaign, he beat Brandon Nakashima and Sebastian Korda, 2 of the top young American prospects. The 2022 season began with Alcaraz ranked inside the top 30 and with a clear goal to compete for and win Masters 1000 level tournaments. In March, he reached the semifinals in Indian Wells, where he lost to Rafael Nadal in a tightly contested, high-quality match. Just 2 weeks later, in Miami, the Spaniard showed significant tactical and physical growth by defeating players like Stefanos Tsitsipas and Casper Ruud. In the final, he beat the Norwegian 7-5, 6-4, claiming his first Masters 1000 title at just 18 years old. He became the youngest champion in the tournament's history since its inception in 1985. With the Miami title, Alcaraz was suddenly seen as a real threat on any surface. In April, he won another ATP 500 title in Barcelona, reinforcing his dominance on clay. But it was in Madrid in May that he pulled off a historic feat, defeating Nadal in the quarterfinals, Djokovic in the semifinals, and Zverev in the final. In less than 72 hours, he took down the 2 greatest champions of the modern era in tight, physically demanding matches. He became the first player in history to beat both Nadal and Djokovic in the same clay court tournament. Despite falling in the quarterfinals at Roland Garros, Alcaraz maintained remarkable consistency during the hard court swing in the second half of the year. In August, he reached the semifinals in Cincinnati, and in September, he experienced the biggest moment of his career to that point, the US Open. His run included 5 5-set matches, including an epic battle against Jannik Sinner that ended at 2:50 a.m. before reaching the final against Casper Ruud. In the championship match, Alcaraz imposed his rhythm from the start and won the US Open title at just 19 years and 4 months old. With that victory, he became the youngest player ever to reach world number 1 in the ATP ranking since the computerized system was introduced in 1973, breaking the record previously held by Leighton Hewitt, who reached the top at age 20. The title also marked a turning point in a season dominated by veterans, ending the Grand Slam winning streaks of Nadal and Djokovic. In just 9 months, Alcaraz rose from world number 32 to number 1, winning 2 ATP 500s, 2 Masters 1000s, and his first Grand Slam. The impact extended beyond the court as well. His Instagram account surpassed 1 million followers, and his endorsement deals with brands like Rolex and Nike were renewed under improved terms. In July 2023, Carlos Alcaraz arrived at Wimbledon as the world number 1, though still surrounded by doubts regarding his performance on grass. Up to that point, his experience on the surface was limited to a few tournaments and sporadic adjustments. Even so, he managed to defeat opponents like Matteo Berrettini and Daniil Medvedev throughout the tournament, showcasing an impressive ability to adapt his movement and shorten points. On the other side of the draw, Novak Djokovic was chasing his 8th Wimbledon title, riding a 34-match winning streak on center court. The 2023 Wimbledon final had all the elements of a generational classic: experience versus boldness, consistency versus improvisation. Djokovic took the first set with ease, but Alcaraz responded with a mix of slices and drop shots that unsettled the Serbian. The third set, decided in a tense tiebreak, lasted 85 minutes and became one of the longest in the history of the tournament's men's finals. After 4 hours and 42 minutes of play, the Spaniard came out on top. It was Djokovic's first loss on center court since 2013. More than just a title, the victory marked a turning point in the tennis world. Since 2003, Wimbledon had been dominated by Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic, with very few exceptions. Alcaraz not only broke that streak, but did so with emotional control, physical endurance, and sharp tactical awareness on one of the sport's most demanding stages. In his post-match interview, Djokovic admitted, "I can't remember the last time someone made me run so much on grass." The statement was widely seen as a tacit acknowledgement of the shifting balance in men's tennis. The impact was immediate. The Wimbledon final recorded the tournament's highest viewership since Federer's farewell in 2019, and Alcaraz's name topped global trending lists for the next 24 hours. Experts began drawing comparisons between his budding rivalry with Djokovic and the iconic Nadal-Federer rivalry of the 2000s, highlighting the contrast in playing styles between the two. The 2024 season brought a new challenge for Carlos Alcaraz, the physical and emotional toll of the ATP's demanding schedule. After playing 17 tournaments the previous year, including 5 finals, the Spaniard began the new season dealing with persistent pain in his right thigh and inflammation in his forearm. Even so, he was entered into back-to-back events in the Southern Hemisphere, traveling to Brisbane, Melbourne, and Buenos Aires within just a few weeks. The heavy match load began to affect his performance, resulting in early exits and clear signs of exhaustion. The breaking point came in March, during the Indian Wells Masters 1000, when Alcaraz pulled out of a practice session citing acute muscle fatigue and publicly criticized the tour schedule. In a press conference, he stated, "The calendar can kill us if there are no changes," pointing to the intense travel and the lack of real breaks during the season. His comments sparked international reactions and were backed by players like Felix Auger-Aliassime and Taylor Fritz, who also reported symptoms of overtraining. Spanish media intensified coverage of his physical condition, with editorials in Marca and El País criticizing the lack of strategic planning in his schedule. Coach Juan Carlos Ferrero was questioned about the high number of tournaments his player was entering and acknowledged the need for adjustments. In response, Alcaraz withdrew from the Monte Carlo and Barcelona tournaments, focusing solely on recovering in time for Roland Garros. The issue gained even more traction after Daniil Medvedev withdrew from the Rome Masters, also due to fatigue, prompting the ATP to release an official statement acknowledging the need to review the density of the annual calendar. While sidelined, Alcaraz remained active on social media, sharing messages of support and clips from other players calling out the tour's unsustainable pace. Carlos Alcaraz's semifinal loss to Novak Djokovic at Roland Garros 2024 sparked an unexpected reaction off the court. Just days after the defeat, images of the Spaniard vacationing in Ibiza began circulating on social media, showing him at private parties with friends and local influencers. The content went viral when a behind-the-scenes documentary produced by a major streaming platform included clips of this unplanned getaway. The episode escalated when Nick Kyrgios, in an interview with Australia's 9 network, mocked Alcaraz's attitude. The Aussie claimed that he's more into girls and partying than trophies, and suggested that Jannik Sinner showed greater long-term ambition. The comments were widely picked up by sports media and sparked divided opinions among analysts and former players. While some criticized the timing of the Ibiza trip, others defended his right to unwind after months of intense competition. Alcaraz responded in a laid-back tone during a Wimbledon press conference, saying, "We all need to disconnect sometimes," and that he knew exactly how to balance his career with moments of fun. While his statement was measured, it didn't stop a wave of speculation in the European press, especially in Italy and the UK, where concerns were raised about whether early fame was starting to affect his focus and professional commitment. At the same time, some Spanish influencers began posting old videos of Alcaraz at nightclubs during his teenage years, which only fueled more curiosity about his life off the court. The player's media team chose not to intervene, letting Alcaraz handle the public reaction himself. Coach Juan Carlos Ferrero downplayed the situation, stating that what truly mattered was performance on the court, not public image. Internally, however, the team revised his media schedule and limited his participation in non-sporting events for the remainder of the season. In February 2025, the tennis world was shaken by the announcement that Jannik Sinner had accepted a voluntary 3-month suspension after testing positive for clostebol, a banned corticosteroid. The case was disclosed through a joint statement by the ITIA and the Italian Tennis Federation, explaining that the substance had been ingested via dermatological spray prescribed after an injury. Despite the conciliatory tone of the message, the news immediately raised questions about the standards used to apply doping sanctions. Carlos Alcaraz, a direct rival of Sinner in the race for titles and rankings, was one of the first top players to speak out. In an interview during the Indian Wells Masters 1000, he stated that there's no point in hiding anything and that the tour needed full transparency, no matter who's involved. Although his remarks were measured, parts of the media interpreted them as a veiled criticism of the ITIA. His comments sparked mixed reactions across the circuit. Players like Holger Rune and Karen Khachanov voiced support for greater clarity in disciplinary procedures, while others, such as Alexander Zverev, warned against the dangers of rushed public judgment. The issue gained traction on social media, with hashtags like double standards and clean sport dominating conversations on X, formerly Twitter. Journalists from outlets like L'Equipe and La Gazzetta dello Sport published investigations into similar cases that resulted in harsher sanctions, highlighting the ITIA's inconsistency. The debate soon went beyond the tennis world, covered by international media such as the BBC, CNN, and El País, which explored the issue from the angle of potential institutional privilege. Alcaraz, who had generally avoided public controversies throughout his career, began to be seen as one of the more balanced and thoughtful voices in the midst of the storm. His coach, Juan Carlos Ferrero, emphasized that the Spaniard has always complied with all anti-doping protocols, including unannounced tests during the off-season. Between 2023 and 2025, Carlos Alcaraz solidified his status as one of the most versatile players on the tour, winning major titles across all key surfaces. At Roland Garros, he claimed the 2024 and 2025 editions, defeating Alexander Zverev and Andrei Rublev in the finals, with technical authority and impressive physical endurance. At Wimbledon, he successfully defended his title in 2024 by beating Daniil Medvedev, confirming his rapid adaptation to grass. On hard courts, he reached the finals of the Cincinnati and Shanghai Masters and won the ATP 500 title in Washington. At just 22 years old, Alcaraz had already collected 3 Grand Slam titles on different surfaces, a milestone that took many established players nearly a decade to achieve. This statistical precocity fueled comparisons with Novak Djokovic, the only player from the previous generation to have won all the Masters 1000 and Grand Slam tournaments across all surfaces. In the ATP rankings, Alcaraz remained continuously in the top 2 for 24 months, alternating the top spot with Djokovic and, more recently, Jannik Sinner. His consistency also showed in the numbers: a finals win rate of over 70% and at least one Grand Slam semifinal appearance every season since 2022. Off the court, Alcaraz became the highest-earning tennis player in the world in 2024, according to Forbes, with $47 million in prize money and endorsements. Brands like Rolex, Nike, BMW, Babolat, and Louis Vuitton signed exclusive deals with him, positioning his image as that of a global icon. Nike's advertising campaign following his second Roland Garros title was broadcast in 18 countries and directly linked his brand to Rafael Nadal through joint promotional efforts. Technically, his biggest improvements between 2023 and 2025 came in transitional play and first serve consistency. Alcaraz began varying his serve placement more and incorporated serve and volley tactics more frequently in high-pressure moments. His movement on hard courts improved thanks to specialized work with biomechanics experts from the Spanish Tennis Federation, who identified the need to adjust his lateral footwork in defensive situations. On clay, he increased the use of high, heavy spin shots during extended rallies, a trait that further reinforced his dominance in long points. On Sunday, September 7, 2025, at Arthur Ashe Stadium, Carlos Alcaraz defeated Jannik Sinner to win the U.S. Open, reclaiming the #1 ranking and securing the third major chapter of their season-long rivalry, following Roland Garros for Alcaraz and Wimbledon for Sinner. In New York, the Spaniard displayed a cooler, more calculated approach, a more efficient serve under pressure, early returns to shorten rallies, and constant variation in height and spin to disrupt the Italian's rhythm. The weight of this result goes far beyond the trophy. In Paris, Alcaraz triumphed through endurance. In London, Sinner imposed his baseline power and rhythm control. In New York, the Spaniard made key tactical adjustments: more aggressive first balls, heavier pressure on his opponent's second serve, and confident decisions at the net. flipping the narrative on hard courts. 3 straight finals between world number 1 and 2 in a single season speaks volumes about their level, but even more about how fast this new era is taking shape. For fans watching from the US, here's the question: what matters more in a great rivalry? Stacking up trophies now, or proving, time and again, that you're the one who rises when the scoreboard tightens? And how far can Sinner go in reshaping his patterns? His first shot after the serve, the average rally height, forehand down the line usage to break apart the chessboard Alcaraz laid out at Ashe. Their next clashes will reveal whether we're witnessing the rise of a dynasty or the start of a rivalry that will define the decade. Following the September 7th final at Arthur Ashe Stadium, where Carlos Alcaraz defeated Jannik Sinner and reclaimed the top ranking, the professional takeaway is clear. The Spaniard has cemented a rare competitive edge at just 22 years old. The ability to make rapid tactical adjustments under pressure. In a matter of weeks, he turned the frustration of Wimbledon into clinical execution in New York, raising his first serve percentage in key moments, stepping in on returns to shorten rallies, and using the net as a finishing tool. Sinner, for his part, held his level with clean baseline power and tactical discipline, the elements that keep this rivalry operating at the highest standard. What comes next demands consistency and emotional control. The indoor swing, the ATP Finals, and the Davis Cup commitments will test the very details that made the difference in New York: breakpoint conversion, second serve protection, and decision-making in tiebreaks. If Alcaraz continues to turn pressure into performance, he's likely to set the tone for the tour. If Sinner fine-tunes his first shot after the serve, varies rally heights, and finds more sharp cross-court angles, the race remains wide open and worthy of defining the decade. If this breakdown helped you see beyond the scoreboard, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications for more real-time tactical analysis. Drop a comment sharing which adjustment made the biggest impact in New York. Hit the like button to boost the reach, and share it with anyone who follows tennis with a technical eye. Your support keeps deep, reliable content flowing at the pace the tour demands.